if anybody knows anything about having ultimate power, I mean, you caused Hillary Clinton to lose the presidency in 2016. So,
You're
you
I thought it was
yeah,
Susan. I thought it was Susan
yeah.
Sarandon. What
The one
happened to
thing,
that?
the one difference that I think has happened in a lot of left circles, which let's just say for the sake of argument, that you did cost Hillary Clinton the election, then your attitude should be good. So you better start listening to what I have to say. Otherwise, I'll
Right,
do it
yeah.
again. And
Yes.
that is the difference between what had happened previously, because people's attitudes were like, well, no, technically that wasn't the case. It's like, listen, if you're on defense, you're already losing. So you have to own where you stand. If the system is broken, then you have to own that the change is coming, whether you like it or not. And I think a lot of people have a hard time recognizing that. So I don't think that the barbs that they threw at you, back then would have the same effect that they do now. Just like I don't think people are going to have the same effect in terms of saying, oh my God, Trump's going to get in again. It's like, okay, we've been through this before. You've already pulled the same bullshit. If he's leading in the polls, there's a reason, because the system you're trying to sell us is not working. End of discussion. So how do you see, even at this point, the effect that corporate media still has over the populace? I think in affluent, liberal circles, especially in the Boston suburbs and places like that, it still has a lot of power. But I do think that there is sort of this changing of the guard that's happening in this country right now, which is why independent media is growing at the rate that it's growing at. How do you see it being in that independent space in terms of the effect that it once had? Obviously, a lot's changed since 2016 because they made you public enemy number one. But I don't think it's having the same effect anymore. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it never had any effect on me, I got to say, and never had any effect on the circle of people that the universe that I live in. I find you need to be very, you need to have a certain level of like jaw-dropping faith in the system to believe a predator who's trying to get you to vote for them and to keep throwing yourself under the bus, which is basically what they're asking you to do, to not believe your lying eyes, and to believe what they say after you get betrayed over and over and over again. It's not like the crises that we have right now are new. These are really a product of bipartisan policies that have gone on for a long time. So, I mean, it boggles my mind that people believe this. I don't know very many who do. It's more the extremely privileged, and they're not kind of like my target constituency to start with. Polls now show that the majority of American people believe that mainstream media is purposefully misleading you and lying to you. This is actually what most people believe now. So, I think what the political elite need is for people to be hopeless. They need people to be hopeless so that they just don't vote, and then so that they tune out. And I feel like our job as activists or as candidates, is to be out there and engaging people. And to the point you were making before, Jen, about, parties being this really artificial construct. I mean, that was my experience the minute I set foot into the political universe, that if you're not on somebody's payroll and you don't have strictly, limited talking points, and you're really having a human conversation and you're really listening to people and you're actually interacting, so you don't have an agenda of stuff you're trying to impose on people. These conversations are really interesting, and they are kind of a discovery, and you can find all kinds of common ground across the political spectrum, and the labels just don't apply. They very rarely apply. I mean, maybe inside the DNC they apply, and the RNC, but outside of that they don't. And there's enormous hunger, in my experience, mostly for integrity. And people can smell if you are a rat, and they smell the political system, and it stinks. And whenever they have any dealings with it, like you go to Capitol Hill and you try to talk to your representatives, my experience is really always to walk away feeling like I've been slimed. I have to go home and take a shower because these people are so, just slimy, and they're serving a disgusting corporate agenda, and they're really not to have they're not there to have a human conversation with you. So, I feel like the main thing here, our job to deal with this kind of nonstop smear campaign, and the DNC has announced that it's making special hires right now in order to smear us, in order to complicate our ballot access and all that. So they're playing the dirty tricks that they always play. Surprise, surprise. Our job is to just be out there making contact with people. And fortunately, people are more tuned out than ever. This is why they want to shut down TikTok. This is why they, have to shadow ban and, jigger the algorithms, bias the algorithms on social media, because they know they are running a losing battle. And I just want to throw out one thing, which is that the most spoiled election ever from the point of view of Democrats was actually the 2010 midterms, when Democrats lost 1,000 state rep seats. They lost 64 congressional seats, 12 Senate seats, and 13 governorships. And where was the third party to blame it on? No third party. This was a response to everyday people being thrown under the bus. This was a response to the bailouts for Wall Street and the throwing out of Main Street. And that's been going on ever since. And so now they try to attribute this to third parties. But the largest voting bloc is the non-voting bloc. In 2016, it was 100 million people. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. That's about enough to win an election right there. And that's where third parties largely draw their support from. So, the rest of what they say is absolute nonsense. And we just really encourage people to have the courage of their convictions and stand up and vote for yourself, because no one else is going to get us out of this mess. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And the other really critical thing, because hopelessness is such a big part of this, they rely on us to be hopeless, because if you're hopeless, then you think you're powerless. But the reality, as Alice Walker said, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. If you consider 100 million people who aren't voting, or 80 million in 2020, it's a lot. Half of the Democrats in Michigan stayed home from the primary. There was also the uncommitted vote of 14%. But even beyond that, there was like 50% who didn't come out to start with. So people are voting with their feet. There's a huge voting bloc right now that's just waiting for something. It's consistent with the 63%, according to Gallup polls, that say they want another choice outside of the parties of war on Wall Street, basically, who've been throwing us all under the bus. So it seems like, don't take anything for granted in this election. Expect the impossible. Expect this to be a black swan election. And it may happen or it may not, but however far we get is all for the good, because the system is totally corrupt, and we need to, build as big a springboard as we can for the next election. And I would not rule out, consider that there are 4 presidential candidates right now who will all be splitting the genocide vote. That is, right. It's Trump, Biden, it's no labels, and it's RFK. Right there. So it's 4 major contenders for the pro-genocide, pro-war, anti-worker, basically, vote. The anti-climate, and I would include Biden as an anti-climate vote. He's got a few headlines here and there, but if you look at the larger drift of what he's doing, expanding the U.S. fossil fuel production by 40% just on his watch, he way exceeded anything Trump did, and his current 22 liquid natural gas plants, the 22 LNG plants. 1 or 2 have been built, but most are in process. And most of these were approved after they sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline, creating, this wonderful marketing opportunity for U.S. Methane, natural gas. That's where most of these LNG plants have kind of gotten their lease on life from. They are equivalent to 440 new coal plants, building 440 new coal plants, which knocks us back to 2005 levels of fossil fuel production. This is all under our great, climate president. So at any rate, they've just thrown us under the bus in every way imaginable. It's really important for us to stand up and, demand the future that we deserve. Because right now it's working for maybe the top 10%, heavily invested in Wall Street. They're doing great, but nobody else is. And it's not just like doing badly. It's like barely keeping a roof over your heads and swamped in debt forever. So it is that perfect storm right now.